finish up legacy living today. Uh, and we started out with, last week we started out in Hebrews and talked about how we have been given an inheritance because of Christ's death. So how God is set up to have an inheritance. And we spent some time just talking about how, a lot of us in some cases didn't start out with an inheritance. Not that we didn't start out with, everything started out crazy or bad, but, if you go back from the beginning, once God's planted Adam and Eve and he said replenish the earth and his generation started to flourish, everybody started out with an inheritance. So if you go Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, you start to read through Genesis and read through what happened to them, they all came into an inheritance. Just imagine starting out in life, especially with your kids starting out in life and your kids don't have to worry about roof over their head or dealing with crazy bosses, people that don't appreciate them. They have an inheritance. They're just deciding what purpose they want to walk in. Think about some of the weight and the stress that a lot of us has dealt with because we have actually been serving in visions of people that don't appreciate our service. So the way companies and corporations are now, and they suck the life out of you. Not because they don't like you. It's just, they're for themselves. It's like a trickle down effect. It's like, something. My son shifted from retail to sales, but he said, "Dad, I just gotta get out of retail." He says because there's never enough. Like this is no matter whatever you do, that's not enough. So, but imagine someone having an inheritance, and some people, they have great ideas, but they're desperate. They're doing it because they need the money. But if you're walking in an inheritance, you're doing it because you have a passion for it. And most people grow in the things that they have a passion for. Bill Gates had a passion for what he was doing. It wasn't, I'm gonna do this for money. And actually, his goal is to give away all his money, just to give away as much money as possible. Because it never really was about money. It was about, I just like creating and coming up with ideas. I was talking to a guy at the gym, and he said, man, he said, the job of a pastor, he said, better you than me. I said, well, actually, I have no complaints because it's what I like to do. But imagine if I was doing it for the money. If we were doing it for the money, we wouldn't be doing it now. It was 2010 or something. After the first few weeks, we would be done. So legacy living is returning back to a place where we're establishing inheritance and legacy, not just for ourselves, but as the scripture says, I gave you last week, Proverbs 13, blessed is a man that leaves an inheritance for his children's children. So he said an inheritance goes 2 generations deep. Children's children. So you have, they have something to walk into. And then, so imagine they started out, well, I have something to walk into. Now they're extending that or building that for their children's children to walk into. So now you have, people be talking about, I remember, I'm so glad Papa Bradley bought this property and left this legacy for us, as opposed to, I think I have a grandfather. I don't know who he is or if he ever did anything in life, I'm trying to do my thing, so as opposed to knowing them and knowing and trying to extend something or carry something. That's why the scripture says you're, Galatians 4, 1 and 2, the heir to an inheritance. No difference from a servant as long as there's a child, there's a tutor, there's a governor to the point of time of the father. And that scripture is basically saying you're being prepared to handle your inheritance. The assumption is there's an inheritance waiting for you. And you're just being prepared to handle it. Not that you can't do it or have it, but just being prepared to handle it. But we talked about that last week. So we talked about most of us have not had a good start. We have reset God's inheritance for those that are coming behind us. Number 2, we talked about last week is a life of inheritance is a life of obedience. not a life of rebellion. It's a life of obedience. A life of inheritance is a life of obedience. See, because we're trusting that everything that God tells us to do is keeping us in line with what we desire. So think about it. We're obedient when we get to a certain place, and we may feel some level of success. The challenge is we rest with success, we get overconfident, we stop doing what we're doing, and we get off track. And then this thing starts to shift around us, like we don't feel the same momentum around us because we didn't continue what we were doing to get to that level, to prepare us for the next level. Scripture talks about continuing in my word indeed in what we do in John chapter 8. And then we talked about inheritance is about sharing and caring for family. It's about sharing and caring for family. It always puts us in a position where we can be benevolent, and we're thinking about sharing. It's something I think about with kids. Or we went through it with our son, who's an only son. Well, he had to learn how to share. And you didn't realize the depth of what he had to learn how to share until he got married. It really was like he just wasn't used to. He didn't have to consider nobody. You know what I'm saying? Wasn't like those two boys over there? They got to consider others. Like it's well, give that to such and such. Well, let him play with it. You deal with that. But if nobody else is around, it's all yours. Like you don't have to share with nobody. You don't have to consider. This is just all yours. So learning how to share and how to consider other people. But we have to do that as we're growing in the things of God. We're not just hoarding it for ourselves. So we was talking to a couple about fasting, and I was talking to the guy again in the gym. You see, I have a lot of conversations in the gym, but we were talking about fasting too. I said, the interesting thing, Isaiah 58, when it talks about fasting, is not just starving yourself from eating, which we've talked about before, but it's really about sharing and caring. Because your flesh does not want to share, and it doesn't want to care. Your flesh wants to do what's comfortable for you. So, that's why we talk about March, the first week of March will be when we do our corporate fast again. We talk about doing that week. It's not just, maybe starving your flesh from eating and things of those type of pleasures, but it's also starving your flesh from the pleasure of selfishness. That would be good. So that's why it says, Isaiah says, oh, this is the fast that y'all have. You sackcloth and ashes, but you're allowing yourself pleasure. He says, but the fast that I have, he says, the person that don't have no coat, the person that's without. He says, and you don't stay away from flesh and blood. You're actually looking to be there for other people. He said, that's the fast that I call for. See, now you extend. So you know how you're around somebody and you want to share the gospel with them, but you're like, I'm not going to talk to them right now because I don't know how they're going to take it. Well, during that week, right, if you're fasting, you're not thinking about you, right? I may look bad, but I'm sharing it today. Or the person that you've been talking about taking to church, but you're like, man, but by the time I go get done, now I'm going to have to get up early. They probably won't be ready. Then I'm going to miss praise and worship, my favorite song. And, they late to work. They probably going to be late when I go pick them up. I'll get them next week. And you keep saying that. Well, if you're fasting, you're picking them up. And while you're driving on the way to church, what you've been praying about, you're ministering to them and God answering your questions. So I have this thing. I go to the gym. I get there at 5, and I warm up. We play around 5:30, between 5:30, 5:45. So after we finish playing, somewhere close to 7, then I go lift. Now I'm trying to get my lifting in, so big muscle lifting in, because when we connect, I try to do some small muscle stuff with her. So I have to, have a schedule, and then I still got things I have to do, especially on Wednesday. We got Bible study and stuff like that, and so I might run into somebody. But see, now that's changing my schedule because then I got to talk to them. I have to, and it's about the Lord. But the Lord is saying, this is more important than your schedule. See, again, that's a fast. So if we live in a fasted life, we're actually looking for opportunities to share with others, as opposed to when I have time or at my convenience. So that's to comfort your flesh. But we're not trying to comfort the flesh, right? It's a fast, right? We're trying to put ourselves in uncomfortable positions. We're stretching ourselves beyond our comfort, okay? And you'd be surprised what you'll hear from God differently. You'll hear from God differently. All right, so, I'm sorry. It's about sharing and caring, I think. All right, and then the fourth thing we talked about, which I just gave you, is the fast has a 2-generational impact. And we talked about a part of it is replenishing. A part of inheritance is replenishing. So an inheritance was established. So the Anderson family established an inheritance. So the next person is supposed to replenish, keep that thing rolling. And then the next person is supposed to take the seed of that inheritance and keep that thing rolling. So then, it's you have the Rockefellers. Okay, where was it? Where did I go? It wasn't the Rockefellers. It was the Jeffersons. Whoever it was, I was in Virginia, and Monticello is the Jeffersons, right? The house on the back of the nickel. Okay. Look at your nickel. There's a house on the back of the nickel. It's called Monticello. It's a house in Virginia. It actually sits on a hill. Literally, it's way up on the hill, and they landscape all the woods. I'm not talking about the flowers. The woods. They went through the entire forest and landscaped it. It's beautiful. It's phenomenal. And they structured it a certain way, but this was an inheritance. And they were saying how it just passed on over and over. Thomas Jefferson actually the architect for Virginia University too. I learned some things over the years. Right, but what I'm saying is he handed down a legacy. Riverside Baptist Church. Riverside Baptist Church is in New York. Riverside Baptist Church. The church runs off of a $90 million endowment. It runs off the interest of a $90 million endowment. So they don't have to use the $90 million. It runs off the interest. The $90 million endowment was deposited by the Rockefellers. They left an inheritance. The church don't want for nothing, offer the interest. See, that's Rockefeller Center. You always hear 30 Rock. Rockefeller Center where they ice skate and stuff like that. These kids and stuff like that. It's all Rockefeller. You go through New York, Rockefeller. Carnegie, same thing. J.C. Penney. All these are people that have left inheritances and established legacies that still exist to this time. And J.C. Penney, this whole thing, I just wanted to give away my money. I just would, whatever. Not because I want to be broke. I have so much. And I'm keeping it replenished. I'm looking for opportunities to put somebody else in a position that my family's in. So if J.C. Penney was man of God. So if they're thinking that, what do you think God is trying to do for us? So now how does that line up with in your little corner at your house? It don't take all that. How does that line up? So how do you impact so many other people with that flow? It'd be kind of difficult, right? Because you barely impacting your own house. So it's not to put no one down. It's to remind us or to awaken us up what God's desire is, and for us to have a thirst or a desire to get back in that position. So now, what choices am I making every day? See, I'm making choices that's going to bring me back in that position. So when things come up, I'm going, okay, this can bring me closer in that position. So now you may have to start that business.